Hello, everybody. Today I will be refuting Ziamara's or Ortiz's claim that is social media negatively affects mental health as well as creates narcissistic personalities. In her first secondary claim, she states that social media negatively affects our mental health at such a young age and only gets worse the more time spent on social media sites. In the evidence that she states, the evidence says a UK government study found 41% of children who spent over 3 hours on social media on a normal school day reportedly suffered from mental health difficulties compared to 21% who spend no time on the site. So as you can see, the change percentage of the effects of social media here is minimal and insignificant. Other major factors could also lead to mental health difficulties, such as the environment children are in, if they're having like family issues, that could affect their mental health. That's not taken into consideration here, and it could definitely affect that study that took place. And in the reasoning that was correlated to this, there's no evidence correlating Facetune to depression in this argument. Rather, there's only assumptions about what young children see in social media. No evidence supporting that either. The study that was reported was, I feel, was overstretched. The initial study that I stated when trying to correlate it with Facetune and depression directly. Second, the reasoning is based off single-sided and negative views of how social media is an evil tool indirectly used against children. In her reasoning, no other factors that can most definitely affect a child's mental health are factored in. When they are, you see that most social media, in fact, is a much smaller issue for children. But in fact, there are studies that show how social media can help teens with their mental health difficulties. For example, a study from Common Sense Media, their site that focuses on trustworthy information on the internet for children and teens. They state that more than 25% of teens report that social media makes them feel less shy, 28% report feeling more outgoing, and 20% report feeling more confident. In other words, 73% of those teens had a positive effect, social media had a positive effect on their mental health. As you can see, social media does not always, if at all, affects mental health negatively. So in her second secondary claim, she says that social media is negatively affecting interaction and communication skills. And the evidence that she provides, it says a study states that 32% using social media or texting during meals instead of talking with family and friends. 10% of people younger than 25 years old respond to social media during text messages during sex. The amount of people using social media at the dinner table or even during sex is so minimal that it makes the evidence irrelevant to how social media could be hurting one's mental health. Based off the study, almost nobody has conflicting issues with face-to-face interaction and social media usage. It really makes this evidence insignificant in her claim. In the reasoning that she used, she stated that if people are disruptive during sex or dinner via social media, how can they be functional in other interactions during life? There's nothing wrong with that reasoning in the process itself, but the evidence ceases to back that up. There are no grounds for it to be truthful. It's just an overwhelming reaction to an underwhelming amount of evidence. In fact, there's evidence that shows how social media usage can actually help with interaction and communication skills. In a study by pewinternet.org, they state that 72% of all teens connect with friends via social media. 83% of these teens that report that social media helps them feel more connected to information about friends' lives. 70% feel more connected to their friends' feelings, and 57% make new friends. Teens with communication or interaction challenges rely on social media to aid them in finding new friends and to connect with one another. In her third and final claim, she says social media causes jealousy and narcissistic personalities, which then leads to cyberbullying. In her evidence, there's a testimony from an author from Forbes magazine that says, studies have certainly shown that social media use triggers feelings of jealousy. The authors of one study looking at jealousy and the other negative feelings while using Facebook wrote that this magnitude of envy incidents taking place on Facebook alone is astounding, providing evidence that Facebook offers a breeding ground for invidious feelings. She also states that 52% of students have reported being victims of cyberbullying, with 84.2% naming Facebook as a site through which you've been bullied. The testimony from this author focuses only on from social media sites is hurtful and leads to cyberbullying. Other factors that create jealousy are not taken into consideration, as you can see consistently. Ziamardo pretty much restates the reasoning as said in the evidence, but she does not consider how other factors can lead to jealousy, such as other kids having nicer shoes or having better grades than the potential bully. Many other physical things can trigger jealousy, which leads to cyberbullying. We all know that cyberbullying is a big issue, but in fact, social media can be used to fight and even end this. For example, take this event, for example, on Facebook that occurred in the retaliation of bullying. So in Hillsborough, California, freshman varsity soccer goalie Danny Quee was blamed for and bullied about losing a season, he was bullied for losing a season over 100 of his teammates. But his classmates changed their Facebook profile to photos of Quee making a save, silencing the bullies and building Quee's confidence. As you can see, this is a prime example of how social media has the power to create the greater good and actually work as anti-cyberbullying. Thank you.
All right, Tristan, the organizational stuff is pretty good at first. It did sound to me like there were 2 second points, and so that was a little bit confusing. There may be a second issue in the first point that you were treating as if it is a distinct point. So other than that, though, I could follow the organizational structure pretty clearly. You do spend a little bit more time on a couple of the points recapping all of the advocate's evidence without necessarily telling us what's wrong with the evidence. Sometimes you do have a response to it. Sometimes there's a question or press on it, but a lot of times you just are kind of recapping it, and that takes a lot of time, and there's less time for your responses as a consequence. I did think that the first point that you're talking about was pretty effective. You talked about how it sounded to me like what you're saying was there's not any demonstration that FaceTime has any relationship to depression. That's a good press. That the absence of evidence on that particular point seems like it's also a good press. You kind of challenged the lack of control on other environmental factors on that. Another press, but there's not really any information that helps you on this argument. You just have like 3 challenges to the general evidence that's being presented there. So some original research on that might have helped. Now, I thought you did a much better job on whatever that second point was, where you're talking about potential benefits from social media and the way that they have, in fact, helped people in some way. And you did provide some evidence there talking about how people developed relationships, they were less shy, they were more outgoing, more likely to make friends, that kind of thing. I thought that worked pretty well as a counterclaim to the argument. You've got the same kind of thing happening later on the second point. When it comes to communication issues, you again challenge things pretty reasonably, suggesting that what they are talking about is mostly irrelevant. It's so minimal. I'm not exactly sure that 32% and 10% is so minimal. You're kind of dismissing it as if it's not important. But what were the consequences of any of those things? Maybe you could diminish the consequences a little bit more. Was anybody hurt? Did they stop going to school? Were their relationships function? And how do we know that there was a mental health issue? Lots of people get, treated rudely, poorly, badly. Somebody says something bad about them, that doesn't send them to their local therapist for the rest of their lives. They just say, well, that guy was an asshole, and that's the way they respond to the point. Why is it different in this particular situation? I don't know. Like I said, you did have some nice information here that suggested that social media has helped people immensely in a variety of ways. And then you also have that example on the cyberbullying at the end where there's a counter example to the advocate's example. None of this seems like it's particularly measurable in terms of impact, except for how people feel about these things. And so the feelings are okay. And since we're talking about feelings, I guess that's the best we can do for evidence on these points. All right, thank you.